The Maple Leafs get back in action tonight, and reinforcements could be on the way. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. How we doing, brother?
Well, I'm good, but the real question is, how are you doing?
How do I sound? We've gotten through. We're gotten through. Appreciate you taking the last couple of days on, and thanks to James. James joined the other day.
Austin had it.
Austin.
I got Austin.
Yeah, Austin. Dude, I was totally out of it on Monday, just dead to the world, and I didn't wake up Tuesday until like 4 in the afternoon. Just a couple of days, I was completely out of it. There's something going around where it's like a big, like 24-hour, 48-hour bug. I was in the bathroom quite often on Monday, so not doing well. I think you hear my voice a little hoarse from all the yakking and whatnot, but we're gonna power through. Everyone else seems to be getting healthy in Toronto, so it's time for me to get healthy too. But the Maple Leafs, with their first game in 3 nights, first time that they've had a long layoff in quite some time, though. Like it's been such a busy schedule since probably like mid-November-ish, like mid to end November. Really, they had like that 2-week span where they only had, I think it was like 4 or 5 games in 18 days. And then since then, it's been boom, 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 back-to-backs, night after night. And it was just like every other night they were playing. And then there was like 5 weekends in a row. They had back-to-backs. And then finally, a couple days rest. You got 3 days off before tonight's game against the Minnesota Wild. And it feels like, things are starting to pop up well for Toronto. Seems like they're getting some reinforcements heading into not only tonight's game, but then heading into the Final Four before the Four Nations face-off.
Yeah, it's almost like they're giving them a bit of a rest before they head out west. It's a weird kind of schedule heading into the Four Nations, but I mean, this team has definitely needed rest. They haven't really looked themselves since I would say the Carolina game. Like the Carolina game, I think kind of started this bit of a downturn. I mean, it doesn't help that John Tavares gets hurt, and that's really impacted things with this lineup. But yeah, this is a Leafs team that's not only needed rest, but just has needed a chance to kind of get a bit of a refresh.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and hopefully they got it. Sounds like some players at least are getting healthy. I know Max Pacioretty's expected to be activated, and he's expected to play tonight against the Minnesota Wild. So you inject Pacioretty back into the lineup. Yesterday, Craig Berube spoke on Anthony Stolarz and Matthew Nye, saying he fully expects for them to play and join the team on this upcoming Western road trip. So both of them should see some action prior to the Four Nations face-off. So it's good to see, right? Even did see Hakanpää and Järnkrok not too far behind either.
Yeah, Hakanpää has been kind of there, skating with the extras, but they're obviously taking their time. But Järnkrok, the important one is he was skating before practice, but he was doing it in a blue jersey. Mm-hmm. Usually the gray jerseys are reserved for like the injured guys. So I don't know what the blue jersey is supposed to mean. I haven't gone the lingo with the colors.
Well, the lingo, the just doing whatever. I have no idea, but typically maybe that means that like gray is kind of a non-contact, right? Or red non-contact jerseys. So maybe it's just because I think you just want him to get up to speed. Like he hasn't played since the preseason. Like he's got to work on his conditioning. I wouldn't be shocked if Järnkrok ends up getting a conditioning stint over the course of the 2 weeks that they're gone for the Four Nations face-off. If we see Järnkrok playing for the Marlies, like would that surprise you at all? That wouldn't surprise me. No. Make sure that he's ready to go coming out of Four Nations.
Yeah, you definitely have to make sure that. I mean, first off, the guy hasn't played in forever, so he needs some sort of game action and
a real conditioning stint, not one of these. Let's send him down there and see if he can still play. We haven't played in a while. A real conditioning stint.
Yeah, like they're not hiding him, right?
No.
He's there at practice. If this was truly one of those Robota Island sort of things, we would not have had a sniff. Like Lou would have had this guy somewhere far away from here. All right, Lou would not allow this guy in the building.
No.
Or he would allow him in the building just through the back room, right?
Right.
Back door. So I do think that not only is his presence sort of needed, right, when you consider how things have been going for the Leafs the last little bit, but even like for the front office to kind of see, like, is this guy someone that maybe we can rely on, right? Like our own kind of trade deadline edition.
Right. No, that's a good point, because if you can bring in Yarncroc, that's a good depth add. That's a really good, addition to the bottom six that can help that little bit additional secondary scoring. Like, he scored 20 goals. Like, he's a 20, whether or not he's a perennial 20 goal scorer, he has the ability to chip in your bottom six, right? We know he has a good shot when he has the opportunity. We know he's someone who can play up and down the lineup. He's defensively responsible. And I think that he would translate really well in a Craig Berube system too. So, I'm excited, to get Yarncroc back. Again, he's not a player that I think is a difference maker or an impact guy by any means, but I think that he could definitely, add to this team's bottom six and maybe get a little bit more offense out of this group. And, it'll be interesting to see how everything kind of unfolds. We've yet to see this team fully healthy, and it seems like they're getting that way, and kind of what this group will look like. Some tough decisions that might have to be made when it comes to the roster also could potentially happen, once everyone gets healthy, if everyone remains healthy too, I suppose. So, it's good to see. Was there any update on Tavares? Did you see anything on Tavares?
He's supposed to come and practice end of the week, so there's maybe the potential he comes back for the road trip. But if this might even be a situation where they have to see if he's not close, just shut him down until Four Nations and let him come back then. But he's been skating with the team. Berube had anticipated he'd be back practicing near the end of the week, but we've heard that before. We'll see if that ends up coming to fruition.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll keep tabs on it. We'll let you guys know the latest on all things Leafs, obviously, as we do each and every day here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. But the Maple Leafs have a game tonight against the Minnesota Wild, a Kaprizov-less Minnesota Wild. So how do they stack up in this one? We'll talk about it next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet, potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's just icing on the cake. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5 and you could win. You'll score yourself $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Welcome back into the Locked On at Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you here as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. It's all Leafs all the time. You can find us free and available wherever you get a podcast, and also up on YouTube as well for the video version. Leafs back in action tonight after having a lengthy break here, 3 days off. Haven't seen that since like November. So the Maple Leafs should be nice and refreshed coming into tonight's game against Minnesota. And the Wilds, now they're feeling a little opposite, because the Leafs, they're getting some players back. Pacioretty expected to return tonight. Minnesota, however, life without Kaprizov begins for them, Dave.
Yeah, I was surprised to see they get a little bit of a reprieve with the Four Nations giving them a 2-week break from playing, because this would have been disastrous for them, in my opinion, because this is a Minnesota team that, while has been doing pretty good in terms of being able to remain in that playoff picture in the Central. I mean, they've don't really have as much competition below them, and that's I think what's helped them. But they've also, had an MVP worthy candidate in Kaprizov. So when you minus that from the lineup, you truly understand why he is one of those Hart Trophy nominee sort of players, because the difference between having Kaprizov and not having Kaprizov is massive for this team.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Kirill Kaprizov, 52 points in 37 games this year, and he was well on his way to being the favorite to winning the MVP, possibly. I would say about the quarterway mark, he was the favorite, and then injuries started to mount, and he's missed 13 games now and is expected to miss another month. But yeah, like this is a completely different team with and without him. So Toronto, they get a little lucky. They get some rest, so they should be well rested. They should have their legs underneath them, and they're going to take on Minnesota, a pretty good team, without their best player. So things should work out well for Toronto tonight. They're on home ice, right? They've been able to sleep and rest in their own beds. They've been able to be with their family. So tonight, should be a game that Toronto, there's no excuse not to show up and play well. Like 3 days off isn't nearly enough to call it rust. Like there shouldn't be any rust either for the Maple Leafs. So I'm expecting Toronto to play well tonight. I mean, it's a team that the Leafs have done really well against over the last couple of years. They've won 5 of the last 6 meetings. They did lose the one meeting earlier this year, 2-1 in overtime. But they had won, the 5 prior meetings against this team. And I was just taking a look. Nylander has absolutely cooked them, just torched this group.
Yeah.
He scored in 5 straight games against the Minnesota Wild. And if you're looking for a FanDuel best bet, for me, Nylander anytime goal, I do like that. I think he's like plus 115 or something like that. So at plus money, a guy who scored 5 in a row, he's got like 6 in the last 5 games against Minnesota. I like that play a lot tonight. So to me, it should be one that Toronto should be able to win.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at this Wild team, like they're 4-6 in the last 10. It's interesting. They're a much better road team than they are a home team.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird things. Like I don't think I've really seen a discrepancy like that for a team that's in the playoffs. Usually,
Vancouver interestingly has a pretty good road record as well.
yeah.
Compared to their home record. But yeah, like Minnesota, their home road splits, they're 18-5-3 on the road, just 11-12-1 at home. That's quite the split.
I think between them and Washington, they have the most away wins, which that's pretty crazy. So like if you're the Leafs, that's probably the one thing you need to watch out for. Like this is a Wild team that comes down, that brings it on the road.
Yeah.
So if I'm a coach, I just bring up that stat and be like, can't take them lightly, even with Kaprizov out. This is what they do when they're when they're on the road.
Yeah. Now they've lost 2 of their last 4 on the road, I guess. They just won in Chicago over the weekend, and they beat Colorado back on Jan 20. But then they lost on the road to Nashville 6-2, and they lost to Vegas 4-1. So, they're beatable. They are beatable. And we'll see what Toronto can do. Why don't we take a look at the Maple Leafs lineup, their projected lineup heading into tonight's game. And, it's not going to look overly different, I suppose, than what it's looked like over the past week or so. One big difference is the addition, obviously, of Max Pacioretty, but looks like Bobby McMann played well enough against Ottawa. He scored the lone goal. He remains up on the top line with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. You've got Domi, Holmberg, and Nylander as your second line. Pacioretty checks back into the lineup with Fraser Minton and Nick Robertson on the third line, and they've got Lawrence Camp and Ryan Reeves as your fourth line. Dave, what's the defense looking like?
Well, you got Morgan Riley's still sticking around with Jake McCabe, Craig Berube says no, he's liked what he's seen in the small sample. That means that OEL remains locked in with Chris Tanev. And then from what it looks like in practice, they're going to keep that Timo Benoit, Tyler Myers pairing, which means Connor Timmins remains out.
Yeah, which we'll see what ends up happening. I guess like defensively, they were pretty good against Ottawa. They were fine, so they get another crack at it against Kaprizov-less Minnesota Wild, who is averaging I think 2.8 goals per game or 2.9 goals per game. So it's not a team that scores a whole lot. So hopefully, the defense can come up big, and then I think we're expecting Joseph Woll to start this one after 3 days rest. Should be in line to get another start here. And yeah, Woll's played well, so I think we should expect some pretty good goaltending out of him. All right, let's take a look at the projected lineup for the Minnesota Wild for tonight's game. We're taking a look at Boldy, Eriksson Ek, and Matt Zuccarello as the first line, Foligno, Rossi, and Hartman as your second line, Ogren, Goudreau, and Trennan as the third line, Shore, Kuznetsov, and Lauko as the team's fourth line. Anything stick out to you with this forward group?
I mean, I don't even recognize half of this bottom pair. Bottom.
Oh, really?
I know Frederick Gaudreau, I know Trennan, I know Shore. Ogren, no idea who. Idea.
He's a first round pick a couple years ago. I think he was a first round pick in the Fraser Minton draft, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the Easton Cowan draft.
Oh, actually, no, I think I remember.
He was someone who the Leafs kind of had an eye on at the time, and he went before, and then the Leafs took Easton Cowan. Kuznetsov, I think, was also a first round pick many years ago, came over from Russia. And then I think Lauko, he spent years in Boston, I want to say. Jay, Trennan, though, did you hear apparently the Leafs might have some interest in Trennan as a bottom six ad? I thought I read that over the weekend.
I heard somebody threw his name. He's been in and out of the lineup. I was reading a bit about him.
Maybe Friedman. I feel like maybe Fried wrote that in his 32 Thoughts piece or brought it up on the podcast or something.
Maybe it was brought up in the podcast. I didn't hear a lot about Trennan. I've heard, obviously, he's been big on the guy out of San Jose.
Right Kunin. That is who I was thinking of. Sorry, not Trennan. Kunin. Yeah, that is who I was thinking of, actually. Similar name. My bad.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, so I haven't like Trennan. I do know. I mean, I know what Trennan's all about. It's just you see the opportunity here. It's a roster that's not as deep in terms of offensive punch. Defense, these are guys who are going to be a pain in the butt to play against, though, I will say.
Yeah, they play hard. Eriksson Ek's a heavy player. Foligno, heavy player. Goudreau, Trennan, Lauko. They've got some heaviness to each and every line. Matt Boldy, young, up-and-coming, big-time power forward in the league. So they are a tough team to play against, but, they have not played very well lately. They've lost 6 of their last 9 games, and obviously without Kaprizov, it's been a lot more difficult for them to win hockey games, right? So you can be as defensive as you want, but you still got to score some goals. We found that out the other night when the Leafs lost 2-1 to the Ottawa Senators. Got to score more than once if you want to win a game in the National Hockey League. Defensively, there's an interesting name here on defense. Looking at Middleton and Faber, John Merrill, Jared Spurgeon, Travis Dermott makes his return to Toronto alongside Zach Bogosian. So a couple of former Maple Leafs on a pair tonight. Exciting.
It is, and I keep forgetting that the Wild got Dermott off waivers.
Same.
From the Oilers when the Oilers have put him on waivers, and I do remember Bogosian, obviously, but this is the big. Obviously, big miss here for the Wild is no Jonas Brodin. So if you're the Leafs, you got a Wild team without Kaprizov and Brodin. That is a gift because those are their best 2 players. Those are, 2 guys that just make this Wild team just when you figure out why are the Wild in a playoff race, it's because those 2 players play a big part in it. So, yeah, so if I'm the Leafs, you're kind of happy that you don't have to go up against those two players. But I mean, Bogosian's been a steady veteran guy. I know he's not what he used to be, especially when he was in Toronto, but still someone you got to account for. Like, it's not a bad blue. I think that's like the strength of the Wild. Really, is their blue line's pretty balanced. Brock Faber's been a great addition for them. Since I think that was the Fiala. Was that the Fiala trade?
Deal. Yeah, a couple of years ago.
So like they did pretty good. They got themselves a top pairing defenseman who eats a lot of minutes. You're going to see a lot of Brock Faber tonight.
Oh yeah. Brock Faber is definitely going to be their shutdown guy tonight for sure, and he can do it on both ends of the ice too. That's what's scary about a guy at the caliber of Brock Faber. All right, so there's the team. There's the lineup tonight. Leafs versus Wilds. You know, I think it's going to be a good game. Should be a really fun game to watch. I can't wait. I think it's a 7:00 puck drop tonight, so it should be a goodie. On the other side, can Chris Tanev possibly make Team Canada at the Four Nations? We'll talk about it next. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I recently used the Game Time Picks to find tickets to an upcoming Leaf game. I was browsing through the deals. They were simple, and I found a great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal is especially impressive, offering the best value for the event. The app's features like seat views before you buy, the all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout make the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me some peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mke, DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you on a Wednesday. Leafs and Wild later tonight. Toronto looking to get back to their winning ways after a loss to the Ottawa Senators, and they're taking on a pretty short-handed Minnesota Wild club. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll come back tomorrow to recap the game. But I want to get into this discussion about Alex Pietrangelo's possible replacement at the Four Nations Cup. Obviously, you know, the news has been out there now for a couple of days. Alex Pietrangelo announced that he is no longer going to be taking part in the Four Nations Cup. He wants to rest and recover during that 2-week break. He's got some ailment that he wants to recover from over that time instead of playing in the tournament, which definitely sparked some controversy because then later that night, who was spotted in the Vegas Golden Knights roster? You would guess it, Alex Pietrangelo. What do you make of that? Like, should that be controversial?
In my opinion, no. It's not an all-star game. It's a little different where I don't know. It's almost like that it has more to do with what Team Canada feels, right? Like if they feel like you know, he's still playing his NHL games, but he won't play for Canada. In a lot of ways, Pietrangelo, maybe that makes them think about, you know, whether they'll have him going forward. I mean, he's a good defenseman, so it's almost like it's tough for them to draw a line in some of those situations. But yeah, if I'm the NHL, like you almost have to set a precedent where if you feel like you want these players that have committed to be there, then you know you make that rule. But I think for a tournament like this, it's not an all-star game. It's a little different. I don't think the NHL should, you know, be like, no, he can't play in NHL games if he's missing the Four Nations.
No, that should not be the case. I don't think that there should be any suspension or anything like that. It's completely up to the player if they want to play or not. Like apparently, even I'm pretty sure Four Nations, like some players declined. I thought I heard there were some people who just like didn't want to play. I could be wrong, but I thought I had read that. But what it does do is it maybe tells you that the players aren't as sold as this being, the be all end all of best on best hockey, right? If they're not willing to play through an injury in this tournament, maybe it doesn't mean a whole lot to them. You know what I mean? Like for months, it seems like the NHL and it's been billed as, the first best on best we've seen since 2016. And, it's going to be great. And they're trying to make it, this big tournament, but maybe it's just not looked as that way by the players, like it's an NHL run tournament, not IIHF run tournament. There's only 4 teams. Russia's not involved, and Germany's not involved, and Czech Republic's not involved, or Czechia rather not involved. Like there's only a few nations, 4 nations that are involved in this tournament, and it's not truly best on best. And I wonder if we'll see more of this happen as the next couple weeks pop up. If more players kind of, now that Pietrangelo has been the first to do it and bites the bullet, I wonder if we'll see other players who've been playing through some stuff would rather just take that 2 weeks to recover.
Well, what are you really playing for, right? Like they're not playing for an Olympic gold medal. They're not
bragging rights, I guess. Like,
yeah, like this isn't a tournament this is just the NHL saying, all right, we're going to get some of you guys a chance to play for your country. But for other players, it's just like, well, I mean, there's other, they want to play in the Olympics. That's the one they want to play in. It's not this, made up tournament to bring in some more revenue for the NHL and, kind of maybe whet the appetite for international play. We're going to hear about a World Cup of hockey again coming through based on reports that we've heard. So like to me, this is just, if I'm a player, you get to show, at least for some, a chance to play for your country. We get to see some, who Connor McDavid play with in Canada, right? Those sort of things. But we're not getting the true international hockey feel of it. Like this is not, I mean, international, as you said, like without Russia, it's felt different. It hasn't been the same. So I get that. But yeah, this tournament for me, there'll be things to watch for sure. But it doesn't have the same muster as an Olympics.
No, one other player who we talked about it ad nauseum like a month ago, as will he pull out of the tournament, is Austin Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the last couple weeks, that conversation has gone quiet because he's returned and he's played well and he's looks healthy again. But I wonder, is there a chance maybe now that Pietrangelo's been the first to do it, you think maybe Matthews starts to think about pulling out to ail his injury over the next couple of weeks? Any shot, you think?
I would venture to guess no, unless something pops up in the next few games.
Yeah,
I'm sure Team USA is aware of this, of a potential for this.
Of course,
probably have prepared for it. I mean, it would be unwise if they hadn't, but at the same time, Matthews, he's one of those players that I'm sure the NHL's had a conversation with, like, we would really like you to be there. You're going to be one of the stars of the tournament, right? You're literally the star of your team. So, I think there's a little bit of that. Maybe Matthew feels a bit of pressure with that, but he's never played for the U.S. in any sort of tournament, right? Like this. Since junior.
No, yeah, I guess he would have played World Juniors back in the day.
I've never seen him do a World Cup, right? And he missed out on the Olympics. So this is kind of that first opportunity. So this is where for him I can understand the motivation to want to play in a tournament like this versus a Pietrangelo who has actually played for Canada.
Yeah,
in tournaments like this.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a really good point. Maybe a little bit more meaning for him. All right. Speaking of Pietrangelo, though, you said the Americans will have to be aware and ready to name a replacement if Austin Matthews does decide to relinquish his role as a member of Team USA. Now the conversation begins. Well, who gets to replace Pietrangelo? And I saw the NHL, and it was the NHL's Instagram post. They put out a list of 8, 9, 10 guys. Chris Tanev was not on that list. I think that it's absolutely a slap in the face that Chris Tanev is snubbed from a replacement graphic. Like, he had a chance to make the team, and now he's not even considered like a replacement according to whoever made this graphic. Um, do you think Tanev has a shot here? Like, why wouldn't
First off, the NHL, shame on you for not even looking at my B list squad for Canada, which did have Tanev on it. They put Bowen Byram as one of the options. He is a lefty. Canada does not need a left shot. They need a right shot or someone that can play the right side.
who's running the tournament again?
Who's running it in terms of like who's choosing the names for Canada?
No. Like, who's in charge of the tournament?
The NHL.
Oh, you think they might want to
Check in on that
more
stuff?
pride in, stuff like this. But anyways,
I mean, and it's also Don Sweeney picking the team, so you gotta look into that too. I don't know. He's not putting Bowen Byram on his team. I'll tell you that. It's a bit of a waste of a player's name being mentioned. Like, okay, like I'm looking at the list here. You got Bouchard. We've heard that name. Jacob Chikrin's name's been thrown in there, which again, another lefty. Don't know if that makes sense in terms of they got other guys who are pretty good on the left. They're good on the left side. They got 4 left shot defensemen.
yeah,
Or 3 or yeah, they have 4 left shot defensemen.
They don't need another one. And what they need is a matchup defenseman. Like, Pietrangelo was going to get a lot of the matchups, right?
Yeah.
Like that was going to be part of his role. And I was reading a piece by Pierre LeBrun the other day, and he was talking about how they plan on replacing him with someone who would play a similar role. And that leads me to believe that they're going to look for someone who can defend, who can defend in their own end, has right shot, but also has a good first pass. Chris Tanev checks all those boxes, right? Yep. He checks all those boxes. And he's another guy that he hasn't been able to play for Canada at the Olympics. I believe he probably has played a couple of world championships, I would imagine. I know him and Morgan Riley played at the world championships, years ago. So he does, he's on Hockey Canada's radar at the very least because of that. I don't know. We'll see. I hope he gets an opportunity. He was asked about it in practice yesterday. He says he's not quite focused on it, but he has, spoken to Tree Living about it. I don't really know why Tree Living would have anything to do with that. He's not part of the selection process, but
yo, Brad, throw my name out there.
Yeah, let him know. Let him know that I'm interested. Just let him know. Let him know. But yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. I think it'd be cool. Drew Doughty's name has been thrown around too as a possibility. He's getting back from his injury. Maybe it's a chance to get Doughty on the team if he plays well. I don't know when they have to name the replacement though. Like
I don't know either.
I'm not sure if they have to do it anytime soon or if it's a couple days before the tournament, if they can wait and see what Doughty looks like when he returns, how he looks. Still lots of questions, I guess, when it comes to this stuff, and whether or not Tanev is on the team. That's going to be another question that we'll find out in due time, I suppose. All right, buddy. I think I've grinded through enough. I think we've gone like 35 minutes or so here. I think we're good. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You could subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mke_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, enjoy the game tonight. Go Leafs, go. We'll keep you we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.